All right, Amy Palmiero, you say your last name Palmiero?
Palmiero.
Palmiero Winters. Welcome to the Trails Collective interview series. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. So you have a very impressive list of accolades, and so I'm just going to read a little bit about you so that the audience can understand what we're dealing with here. So in 1994, Amy was involved in a motorcycle accident which crushed her left leg. After 3 years and 25 surgeries, her leg was amputated below the knee. She would not be able to run at all until 3 years after the amputation. Okay, in 2007, Amy set a world record as the fastest female amputee to run a marathon in 3 hours and 4 minutes. Since 2007, Amy has continued to redefine the limits of what an amputee can achieve, completing numerous endurance races. She's run 103.4 miles to win the Run to the Future 24-hour race in Arizona, which earned her a spot on the U.S. national track and field team. She was the first amputee to finish the Western States Endurance Run and the Badwater Ultramarathon in California. She holds 11 world records in various track events and is the recipient of ESPN's 2010 ESPY Award as the top female athlete with a disability. That is quite an impressive resume. And then in 2019, she tackled something even harder, a 6-day, 140-mile race across the Sahara Desert in 52 hours. Amy is 46 years old and comes to us from Hicksville, New York, and is the director of Team A Step Ahead Prosthetics. Recently, Amy ran 100 miles on a treadmill, clocking the fastest time ever by an amputee and setting a world record in 21 hours, 52 minutes, and 19 seconds. Amy, thank you so much for coming on the show. I've gone down the Amy rabbit hole this past couple days, and it has been lovely. I love reading about this, especially in the times that we're in. But I had to ask, why a treadmill?
It's something that we've actually done before, and we actually did this stuff before social media was popular and everything else, but we actually did this back in 2009. And I think one of the things that sparked this, number one, was my daughter had said to me, a few weeks, probably like 3 weeks ago now, my daughter had said to me, she's like, wow, she's like, I really wish I would have known she said, I really wish I would have known what was going to have had happen because I would have done things differently in school. And I looked at her, kind of like shell-shocked. I'm glad that she had this realization, but I said to her, I said, Madeline, I've been trying to teach you this your entire life. When you walk out that door, there are no second chances. There is no guarantees. So when you do something, you want to be satisfied with what you're doing, knowing that you've done your best and you've given your best effort. And prior to that, one of my friends, Joe DeSena, he had said, he was talking, we were on a group call, and he said, Amy did 3,000 burpees and she did the barbed wire call for 12 hours. And then I got to thinking to myself, this is something like I did last year. What have I done to prove that? What have I done to live up to my standards? And I looked at all of that, and my daughter said, oh, Mom, didn't you do this, run 100 miles on a treadmill and set a record probably 10 years ago? And I had said, yeah, you're right. But with today's social media, everything's a little bit more out there. And it's exciting that people are becoming more adventurous in doing more things that are extreme. And so what we did was we basically just took a step back in time and revisited that 100-mile run on the treadmill. Like I said, we did the 100-mile treadmill run in our preparation for the US 24-hour World Championships and leading into Western States. So it was pretty much, let's get a hold of Guinness and let's get everybody on board. Joe DeSena provided the perfect backdrop, which was Pittsfield, Vermont, home of the death race. And that was it. It was pretty much set into motion extremely fast. When we were going there the night before, we didn't even have a treadmill. And we were so fortunate that someone from Rutland, Vermont, a gentleman named Sean, who owns some fitness clubs there in Rutland, Vermont, was able to provide us with a treadmill.
So I want to come back a little bit to, do you feel like chasing your shadow a little bit? Like you've done so many incredible things that you're saying, well, I did that already, but it doesn't seem like you're satisfied with what you've already done. Like you're looking for the next thing, which I think a lot of people can feel a commonality with. But I want to ask you quick about Joe DeSena. How do you feel about his comments about Spartan Race and that people that are afraid to go to his Spartan Race in June, they're already dead inside if they're afraid of the COVID-19 virus?
Well, I think, to be honest with you, things happen in the world. And I will and always will stand behind Joe and his beliefs. But bad things happen in the world all the time. Last year, our family, we lost our mother, we lost our sister-in-law, and we lost our father, all within 3 to 4 weeks of one time span. So loss is going to happen, sadness is going to happen, just adversity is going to happen regardless to what's going on in the world. So the better you are at handling that, and the better equipped you are mentally and physically, the better you deal with stuff like this. So I want to say, and I can't speak for Joe and I can't speak for what's in his head, but I think Joe is the type that will challenge you, and Joe will take your fears and rip them right from your body and lay them right out on a plate in front of you and dare you to eat them, basically. And that's what it's all about. He teaches you, and he's taught me, to get to the end of the road. When I get to the end of the road, I am going to know that I freaking kicked ass. I am going to know that I did everything possible to be better, to do better, to be the best example that I can be. And as far as the race that's coming up, the Spartan race that's coming up, that's kind of going to debut everything, and I feel it's going to put the exclamation point onto all the sorrow and everything that's happening. This could be essentially that exclamation point where it's bringing everybody together. And I know that it could be a scary situation for people, but that's why, just like with us in my facility, and where I, run 2 prosthetic facilities, one in Long Island and one in Boston, we take those safety precautions. So if you educate your staff and educate those athletes who are coming in, you're gonna maintain a safe environment. And I don't think any comments about anybody being dead inside is essentially true. I think it's just saying, hey, you can do this. And if you're afraid of doing something that maybe presents itself as a challenge, do your education, maintain your own safety, but get out there and do it. Because if this pandemic hasn't shown us anything, it's you are not guaranteed a second chance. You have no clue what's going to happen tomorrow. So take today and literally kick ass. And don't turn around at the finish line and say, well, I think I could have, or if I would have just, I would have. And it's not even sports, it's everything in general. Utilize what we've experienced, what we're going through, to make yourself stronger. And it's about you and your family and those around you. Make yourself stronger, provide a better, be a better role model. You can utilize what has happened to essentially just grow unbelievable and be something you never thought possible.
That's an interesting perspective. I agree with some of the things you said, and it's an interesting perspective for sure. We'll have to see how everything plays out.
And you know what, to be honest with you, Joe will sit there and look at me and he'll laugh at me, and he's like, why do you gotta be so goddamn stoic all the time? Why do you have to be, when I ask you if you need this or you want this, why can't you just say you're hurting or you need something or what you want? And to be honest with you, life hits you head on. And if if I don't take every single step of my life with that attitude, then I'm never going to get through anything. So whatever you present, I'm going to go after it. I'm going to make it work, whether I have to go above, below, around, whatever it is, I'm going to get there. And that's just the way that I have to look at it. And another thing is negativity. Any type of negativity that I will, whether it's doubt, anything that I let in my head when I feel fatigued or when I feel tired or when I feel stressed, that just automatically accumulates to 10 more reasons why I can't, or 10 more reasons why woe is me. And that's how I look at my life. And that's how I've tried to teach my kids to look at their life. And, you know, if everything around us hasn't taught us that, I don't know what will. You know, I was hit by a car that day. I did everything to save my leg, everything in my power. And I walked away from that situation where I lost my leg, I lost my job, I lost my insurance, and I had to start all over again. Did people walk on the opposite side of the street because I was missing my leg? Yeah. And it's funny, you were talking about some of the things that I've done. And obviously being a mother is the most important thing to me. But I remember setting out on my first 100-mile race, and I was so excited to go run this 100-mile race. And it was essentially a race that I was going to do to obtain the qualifying standards for the Badwater 135. I went out to this race. My coach says to me, what are your goals? What's your expectations? What do you think you're going to do? And I say, well, I'm going to do it in under 24 hours. And he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. This is your first 100. There's no way that you're going to do it in under 24 hours. Just be happy if you finish. And I kind of, you know, walked away from the situation, not having that really settle in my head too well, because I'm all about set your mind to it and you can accomplish it. Yeah, you might fail 20 times, but you'll still get there someday. So went to this race, took off. Obviously, you don't have to worry about false starts at a 100-mile race. Everybody just kind of, yay, and takes off nice and slow and gets into their comfort zone. I ended up turning around at the 50-mile mark in first place for all females, ran back, crossed the finish line in 18 hours.
Wow.
So I was under 19 hours when I crossed this. I think I was top 5 overall, first female finisher.
What race was this?
This was the Heartland 100. And it was freezing out there. It was so cold. And I remember on my way back, you know, 3/4 of a way through the race, I was met by a bull. And there's me in the middle of a chicken prairie, scared to death, you know, with this giant beast in front of me. Of course, you know, he lunged and turned the other way. I screamed, peed my pants, but I was fortunate because nobody was around me and nobody cared. And in an ultra, you can do whatever you want anyway. So, but I crossed the finish line, winning my first 100, going sub 19 hours. And I remember heading back to the airport, and I was so excited because I couldn't wait to go home and tell my family what we had just accomplished. And I had the, you know, the big trophy in my hand. And of course it was a giant slab of rock. So I got the big trophy in my hand and I get on the plane and, you know, I'm excited. I'm like in a running skirt and I'm sitting in my seat and I got my trophy up there and my leg down here. And, you know, I'm sure when you get on a plane, you're always wondering where you're sitting and who you're sitting by. So as the plane started filling up, I just knew it. I don't know how I knew it. Maybe it was fate or destiny, but I knew that this person was going to be my person that I was going to sit beside. And I watched her come back. And as she came back, she's watching and she's looking at the different numbers and she gets to our seating area and she stops. And then she looks over at me and she looks specifically at my leg because I was on the right side of the plane. So my left leg was very visible and I had a skirt on. So she looked at me, she looked at my leg, and then she looked around the entire plane for someplace else to sit and asked if there were different seating, if there was, you know, an open seat anywhere. And, unfortunately for her, there was no unopened seating, so she had to sit beside me. And the entire plane ride, she sat with her back turned towards me. And I remember sitting there, and I was so sad, because I was so excited to tell somebody about what had just happened. And here this person was, who didn't even want to sit beside me because something was different about me. And it's unfortunate that life has to be like that, because who knows, we could have been the best of friends. But that's just how life works, and it's everywhere. And so for all of us, it's just about getting through everything that's going on right now, and finding the best in everybody,
Having that experience, and probably like having multiple examples of that towards you since you had your leg amputated, I bet like now, I bet you're really understanding of what's going on for the push for racial justice right now, because you have experienced it in your life, and you are a conventionally attractive white woman. So can you speak to that a little bit? Like, what, with all the protesting and the right push for racial equality that's going on right now, how has that, how have you seen parallels in your life?
So in my life, you know what, it is a part of life. I will get stared at. I will have people not want to stand beside me. I will have people move to a separate seat. I remember another time I was on an airplane, and this was the time when I was burying my mother and father and sister-in-law, and I had to jump on a plane and fly back home, get my daughter on a plane because she was going on vacation. Then I got back on a red-eye flight, and as I was sitting there, I remember sitting in the seat, and I was in an exit row, and the stewardess came back, and she's like, "You're not allowed to sit here. You're not physically capable of doing the requirements necessary." And I kind of looked at her, and I was like, "Excuse me?" And I said, "I've sat here before on multiple planes, and I am allowed to sit here, and I am capable." And she's like, "I'm sorry, but you're not physically capable. You have to move." So she went, I said, "I'm sorry, you have to get somebody else." So she went up front, came back. And as she was saying it, it wasn't like she was saying it quietly. She was saying it to everybody on the plane. And so then when she came back, I think it was like the third time, and brought somebody back with her, I finally stood up in my seat, very, very upset at the situation. And as they continued to tell me that I physically couldn't perform, I stood up and I said, "I'm sorry, and I don't mean any disrespect to any of these people in the seats around me, but I am more physically capable than you, or you, and I could pick you and you up and carry you safely off this plane." I said, "So I'm going to sit here and perform the duties if they are needed of me." But, and I kind of telling different stories and stuff, but in relation to what's going on in the world and the protests and everything else, right now, it is about us building defenses for ourselves, because at the end of the day, the only person we have is ourselves. So I could protest. I support peaceful protests. I support equal rights, but I'm a bigger supporter of being stronger on the inside. Us being stronger. Adversity is gonna hit. No matter what we do, no matter where we go, no matter what lifestyle we live, we have to arm ourselves with the strength to survive and to endure and to get through whatever life throws us. I know maybe it's not the answer that you wanted to hear, but it breaks my heart what's happening in the world right now. It literally breaks my heart. But I am a believer in we control our own fate to a certain extent. I couldn't control what happened to me. I lost my leg, and you know what? It sucked. But I control how I deal with it. And in light of what's going on in the world, we have to be smarter. We have to be stronger. We have to be okay in our own skin, regardless to what color it is. Or, you know, color is just, to me, it's nothing, because if you are colorblind, those things don't even apply. I mean, in our lives, we are colorblind in our family. And because life happens, adversity happens, disabilities, everybody's different on the outside. And you know, when the young lady on the plane turned her back to me, it was important for me to show everybody, students, I would go and speak to schools, and to show them that on the outside we're all different, but on the inside we are all the same. And it's important to understand that, because you never know who you're standing beside or who you're going to meet. They could be your best friend. They could be, you know, somebody that you spend the rest of your life with. You just never know. On the outside we're different, but on the inside we're all the same. We have the same insides. Our, you know, heart beats the same way. Our blood versus through our veins the same way. But it's about what happens at the end of the day. At the end of the day, no matter what we do, we have to live with ourselves and to be confident, to have goals, and to have the strength to overcome adversity, for me, is key. And if I could go out and help everybody understand that, or maybe feel that, then I would. I just can't right now.
So let's pivot just a little bit. And you've experienced an extreme trauma. You lost your leg. Is it similar to pushing your body to the limit in ultras voluntarily? Like, in your opinion, is the motorcycle accident still the worst pain, the worst trauma you've ever felt? Or have you been accessed to higher level of pain in the ultra endurance events that you do?
So I think, so I'm very fortunate in the fact that when you talk about pain and the levels of pain, and, you know, was my accident the most difficult thing that I went through as far as pain wise? I want to say my accident and the way that my body dealt with it was almost similar to childbirth. Whenever I have something that's at such great pain levels, I will go into shock. And when I had my accident, I obviously went into shock. And I think, I don't know if it's purposely or if it's by choice, but I essentially blocked a lot of that out. And when I am doing ultra races, I do try to block out all of that as much as I can. So I look at it this way. Pain is something that your mind creates. And I know everything's in my mind, but pain is something that your mind creates. I remember being in the hospital in immense amounts of pain, laying in the hospital bed, not knowing what was going on. And my dad sitting beside me saying to me, don't push the pain medicine button. Don't do it. He's like, you can do this with your mind. You can fight it with your mind. So here I was with a crushed foot, just coming out of surgery, you name it, and not utilizing any pain medicine because he was teaching me how to do it with my mind. When it comes to endurance racing and anything in life, it is a feeling. So we're fortunate that we have, how many kids do we have now? I know it sounds bad, but we have 5 kids at home, 1 who's outside of the house, and a godson. And I've always taught them, you know, they'll look at me and they'll say, oh, I'm cold. But cold is just a feeling, and cold is something that your mind has decided on what it is. And that's because I told you you were cold. So when we were little kids, had our parents never said we were cold, we would never realize that. It would never really click in our mind. And I remember doing the Ultraman, and the Ultraman is a 3-day event where you do 2 triathlons back to back. Basically, the lengths of them are the equivalent of 2 Ironmans, I'm sorry. And I remember being in the water. I wasn't even a half mile into the 10K swim. I was so cold that my body was actually shaking in the water. Half a mile into it, and I said, that's it, game over, I'm done, I'm getting out, I can't do this, it's too cold, I can't stand it. And then I said to myself, are you serious? You're really going to quit? How can you come here and quit because you're cold? And I said to myself, I'm like, Amy, come on, you got to get through this. And I remembered thinking of the feeling that you get when you're laying on the beach and the sun is kind of hitting your body, and you're laying there, you're sitting in a chair, you're outside, and the sun is warming your skin. And I remember closing my eyes every time my head would go in the water. I would close my eyes and think of that warmth of the sun. And I'll tell you what, it ended up being my best 10K swim. I stopped shaking. I felt great. I didn't need any hot fluids on the swim. And that's just because I was able to mentally talk myself out of being cold. So when you're in an ultra race, of course, you have to be mindful of creating permanent damage. You don't ever want to put yourself at risk of injury that you're not gonna heal from. So when it comes to that, and I'm out there running, I ask myself, okay, Amy, what are you doing? Why are you slowing down? Why are you limping? And I'll actually communicate in my head and decide why I'm doing this, why I'm slowing down, why are you walking? And then my reply to myself, well, okay, because I'm tired. And I'll say to myself, okay, Amy, yeah, tired is just a feeling. And whether you run or whether you walk, you're still going to feel tired. So you may as well run and get to the finish line that much faster. Okay,
I tell that to a lot of people. They're like, how do you run so fast at the end of a 40-mile race? I'm like, because the finish line is 3 miles away. Anybody can run 3 miles. I'm just going to keep running. I was talking about it with my workout partner this morning because he was doing this motion I called the ultra shuffle. It was on our cool down, so it didn't really matter, but I was picking on him because I was able to run backwards at like a faster pace. And it's actually, I think, even easier to run at your more natural gait than to go super slow and just shuffle. And so, yeah, no, I completely understand what you're saying. And also when you were talking about cold, this happened 2 years ago, and I will never forget it because it's also reframed how I think about being cold. Is one of my friends is a smoker, actually, and it was like 3 degrees outside, and he would still go out and smoke. And I was like, how can you go out there and stand with your bare hand in 3 degrees? And he just goes simply, it's just cold, and I'm going to come in, and then it's not going to be cold anymore. Like, it's just cold. And then that just always, like, I'm not a smoker, but like that just replays in my mind. Like when I'm running, when it's single digits out here, it's like, it's just cold. I don't have to live out here. And eventually I will get inside. It's just cold. It's not a big deal. So I completely understand what you're saying about that.
I mean, it's essentially, it's a feeling. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're stranded in the cold and you're at risk of frostbite, that's a totally different story. But when you're trying to get your mindset all together and you're focusing on a goal ahead, your mind is going to start throwing in these little teeny bombs of why you can't do something. You have to be strong enough mentally to take them and throw them back. As soon as one comes in, take it and throw it back, because your mind is extremely strong and you're the one who taught it those types of things. If something hurts, it's because we were taught it hurts. I've always focused on when my kids were little, whenever something would happen to them, it's that whole thing of oh my gosh, are you okay? I'd be like, yep, you're okay. I remember my daughter, we were in a Wendy's, and one of her friends' mothers opened the bathroom door, and it was a metal door, and it swung open and it hit her right in the forehead, and it split her forehead above her eyebrow. And I looked at her and I was like, I'm like, you're fine. I said, we have two choices. We can go to the hospital, or we can stay here and get our frosty. And I said, we could stay here and get our frosty and super glue it when we get home. And she's like, oh, I want to stay and get my frosty. So we stayed there. She got her frosty, ate her ice cream. We went home and we just, cleaned it up really good and put a little bit of super glue there. And now she has a really nice story to tell.
Yeah.
But if I wouldn't have went about it that way, who knows where she would have been, because I put that in her mind. So when I'm out there running, I focus on, and I tell myself, I'm like, wow, I feel really good. I feel really strong. And so last weekend, when we were in Pittsfield on Joe's farm, when we were in Pittsfield on the farm, as I was running, my daughter was sitting there beside me. It just kind of came full circle, and she stayed up the entire 24 hours, and she could see when I was physically feeling spent. And she said to me, she's like, Mom, you got it. She's like, you look awesome. You look so strong. She's like, you just keep running. And so she actually does listen to those things that I've been telling her over the years. And she turned around and gave it right back to me. And it works. So when you're out there in an endurance race, yeah, it's gonna suck. Anytime you do something for however many hours and continue to go on and push your body, it's gonna be difficult. But if every time it becomes difficult, you stop or you pull back, how are you ever going to take that range of difficulty and expand it? Or essentially, how are you going to take that range of difficulty and decrease it? Because if you're told to go 5 rounds and you never go past 5 rounds, how are you going to know what you can really be? So at the end of 5 rounds, you know what? Do a few more reps. And it just goes to show you that there are no guarantees in life. Always give your best, do your best. So when you look back, you know you did amazing.
I agree. A lot of behavior is learned. There's the biological, like eating, sex, and being near people. That's like biological. But a lot of behavior is very learned and can be teachable. Is there a behavior or something that you still are working on to teach yourself right now?
Oh my goodness, yes, I am. I have been working my entire life at teaching myself to essentially love me. Because that's something, my limb loss or, my accident was nothing compared to the demons that I fight when I look in the mirror. So myself, as in who I see and what I see, over the years has become so distorted that, I've fought with it ever since I was a little kid. I continue to fight with it. And I'm good at helping other people. I'm just not that great at helping myself. So I've tried to really adopt the philosophy that I teach others. I try and remember one good thing about myself to try and help me pull away from the different negative things that will stack up on it. And it's funny, I can go out and run 130 miles in 24 hours, but I can't get past what I see in the mirror. So is that, something that I fight with every day? Absolutely. Every minute of every day, and it'll probably be for the rest of my life. But I am getting stronger with it, and I will say, not being so hard on myself kind of helps a little bit. But as far as is something that I'm not that good at, that would have to be it. That self-confidence in what I see is always kind of that little darkness that kind of hangs out on my shoulder.
That's really hard.
You know what? Everybody has something hard in life. Everybody has something. Some people have.
That doesn't mean your feelings aren't valid. I mean, it sucks to feel like that, especially with somebody as accomplished as you. That's like a huge message to other people that like accomplishments don't mean anything. Like if you like, I mean, you struggle to love yourself, and that should be your number one relationship is you should love yourself. And because it's like putting your own oxygen mask on first. Can you really truly love somebody else if you don't have the self-love? And that's debatable, but you know, it's that is really, really hard. And you know, it's not like you like, I mean, you won an ESPY. I mean, like it's not like that immediately was like, oh, now I love myself. And I think that that resonates with me on my own journey because I guess I always, you know, if I qualify for the Olympic trials, if I win this, if I, you know, and I would have to say that doing a lot of work has helped my relationship with myself. Um, and I also know that like if I never won anything ever again, I'd still run and I'd still appreciate myself for who I am. But it's also like having goals. And so it's like a little bit of a balance of like, you know, maybe that a little bit of that, like, I can be better keeps you moving forward and, you know, having more and more accomplishments. But it also is like, sometimes it's like, I just want to give it a rest and, you know, not feel like I need to accomplish all these things just to like myself.
And that is true. And you touched on a valuable thing in my life. And you know, when you look around our home where we love the most, live the most, laugh the most, there are no, you know, articles of accomplishment, because what we accomplish as a family is what we're most proud of. So you referenced the ESPY, and we have the Sullivan Award. We have all kinds of awards. And to be honest with you, where are they? They're out in the garage. And Chris has asked me several times, he's like, can't we keep them in the house? Can't we do something with them? And my answer is always no, because I'm not about that. I'm not about that. We're not about that. We're about what we create inside and how we live our lives. And at the end of the day, what we're passing on to our children. You know, when my mother and father and everybody passed away, it's about the importance of them that you have absorbed and utilized in your world, and then you allow them to live through you. So if I focused on all the material items, how am I going to teach my children to live their lives without those types of boundaries? I feel material items place boundaries on you, and they ultimately set you up for struggle, essentially, especially as an athlete, because it's very hard as time progresses to be able to accomplish those certain things. And it's funny, Nikki Kimball, I read something from Nikki. We had done some speaking engagements for North Face, and it was unique to see someone as amazing as her. She actually took a step back and said, wow, I got to reevaluate myself for my age and for my ability levels now. So if all we focus on is the medal or the award or the statue or whatever it is, then we're never going to be happy as we progress in life, because it just sets us up for failure. Because as time moves on, we have to be okay with the best of what we can do for right now. And like I said, the material aspects, they're definitely not of importance to us, but being okay with who we are and how much we love each other is important to us, especially with what's going on in the world right now. You have to take the time that you have and live it to the fullest.
What is one time where you just accepted the fabulous athlete that you are and were just able to just smile and be like, yes, I am Amy, and Amy is enough, and I feel very content in this moment?
Never. I don't think I've ever done that. But there has been times when I have fulfilled that feeling of being a mother, and to me, that's more important. I remember when I jumped on the treadmill, it was great. My kids had bought me a Mother's Day present, and it showed up the day we were leaving for Pittsfield, and it said, I'm the mother. I have to go look at it. But it had something to do with being the mother that everybody else wishes they had. But as far as standing up and saying, wow, I'm amazing, I did that, I accomplished that, have I ever really had that type of a feeling? No, I haven't. I can honestly say that I think I'm too uncomfortable with myself to ever stand up and say that, but I also still know that I have more to give. Not to give at that moment, but I still have more to do, more to accomplish, more people to help, more barriers to break down, essentially. And I remember we came back from Marathon des Sables after the article with the New York Times. We're actually in the process of writing a book. And the publisher had said to me, you know, we want to write a book. We want to write a book with you. And I said, I really don't feel like I'm there in my life. I don't feel like I'm worthy yet. But, you know, everybody obviously kind of laughed at me. And it's a huge undertaking. But even in that situation, if we're outside doing whatever, if we're just running on the track, if we're working out in the morning before the sun comes up, I'm just Amy. I'm just like everybody else. There's nothing any different about me, you know, maybe besides my leg, that isn't unlike anybody else. I'm just your normal average person who won't give up. I won't give up. I don't want to ever give up. And it's about continuing to push, because you never know who will see you and whose life you'll change. So I think if I stood up and did the wow, I'm awesome, it would completely zap my humble personality and maybe change the direction in where I'm going in life. I don't know.
I don't think that I necessarily meant, oh, I'm awesome, look at me. I think I meant like just being content with who you are. Say you never did another race. Say, you know, you never just, you know, or say like everything in your past didn't happen or it didn't matter. Like just being content with just Amy. And how would you like how are you teaching that to your kids, that no matter what you do, you don't have to do anything as long as you are trying your best, you're a nice person, and people love you, and you should love yourself. Like, how do you teach them to do that?
So then I guess I'm actually doing a double standard, because I will actually teach my children, and I teach them all the time, do your best, give your best, be happy with that. And then on the same hand, I will say, I'm done racing, I've done enough, I'm happy, but then I still won't stop. But I don't feel that that has to do with I've accomplished enough, or in teaching my children that you give your best and then that's good. That's good for that day. I think where my continuation and my drive continues to push me to where I can't stop, it's that deep-seated, you know, little dark thing that sits on my shoulder that says, Amy, you're not good enough. And essentially it just says, Amy, you're not good enough. And it's that I can fight everything else, I can block everything else out, but it's that little voice that continues to just lure me in the directions that it takes me. So I think it has to do with a lot with how I was created and built and shaped, and the foundation that I grew upon, essentially.
Do you enjoy doing these ultra events, or is it kind of like a monkey on your back?
I remember, so when I jumped on the treadmill, I had to laugh, because I'm on the treadmill. I'm not even an hour into it. And in my mind, I played out this whole scenario. I'm like, I feel my leg cramping, but it was cramping. So my leg started cramping. And when it cramps, it makes it so I can't extend it fully. So every time it happens, I kept tripping and almost falling off the treadmill. And so I said to myself, you know what, I'm just gonna get a cramp, I'm gonna fly off the back of the treadmill, I'll probably end up breaking something, but then I can be done. I'll be done, I don't wanna do this, I'm tired. But I also know myself, it takes me about 5 hours just to kind of get into a groove. So I also know that when I'm out there, I have to continue to take one step forward until I get through this feeling, till I get through this area. It's a given, it happens every time. And it's basically the first 5 hours of any type of a competition, race, event. The first 5 hours are pure torture. They are absolute hell. But I also know, and I keep telling myself, just one more step, just keep going, you're gonna get through it. And then once I magically hit that 5 hour mark, then I'm A-okay. But have I been in situations where I've wanted to quit? Absolutely. Do I enjoy it? Not at all. It's a stress, it's stressful, it's a struggle, it's difficult on my body, but I don't know, maybe it's an addiction I can't stop. I'm not sure, but it also feeds my soul. It also feeds me and allows me to feel good about myself. Hi, Madeline. Hi, Mom. Do you want to say hi? Please say hi. This is Madeline. She stayed up the entire 24 hours with me.
Hi, Madeline.
She stayed up the entire 24 hours with me and ran on the treadmill. So she jumped on a true form treadmill.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so those are kind of difficult to run on. So she jumped on the true form treadmill, and Joe said to her, he said, for the first however many minutes, run with your hands on until you can breathe comfortably through your nose. And then once you reach that point, then you should be able to let go and then continue to run. She wasn't even like 30 seconds on the treadmill, and she was already doing 14-mile-an-hour sprints. I was
wow.
like, and here I was envisioning flying off the treadmill and breaking something, and it was great. She stayed up the entire 24 hours and was a huge support for me. I think she already ate, honey. Ask Christopher.
No, she didn't.
Oh.
Oh, man, I'm hungry.
Lola's hungry.
Well, you are a very complex individual, Amy. I've enjoyed talking to you, and thank you for giving me 45 minutes of your time. I just want to end with a couple quick questions, and they're not anything no psychology or anything. So what's harder to train for, your fast marathon or a 6-day stage race?
Oh, God. So, true story. So before all of this hit, we were set, obviously, to run Marathon des Sables. So we're doing that with Netflix. And Netflix, their focus is human performance. And the episode they want to film is pain. So of course they asked me, they're like, will you run Marathon des Sables again? Because obviously you were in so much pain and we want to duplicate that again and put it on a TV show. So we're set to run Marathon des Sables. Then we're also set 5 days later when we get back to run the Boston Marathon. And the Boston Marathon this year, it was the first time ever they were actually having individual classifications for athletes with prosthetics or athletes with disability. So it was a huge groundbreaking movement. And in my head, I knew that I was basically going to be carrying myself in a little bucket, because by the time I got back from 6 days in the desert, I was going to be a hot mess. So when I got to the Boston Marathon starting line, because of the, physical shape that I was going to be in, I wouldn't be expected to run a fast marathon. It would be about just getting to the finish line. So Marathon des Sables actually announced and postponed the marathon until September. So immediately as that happened, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I have to run a fast marathon. I have no excuse for running slow. And I ended up having a friend, he helped me with my coaching. Going out and running sprint workouts and mile repeats completely kicked my butt. It was so hard, and I haven't done that since probably 2006. So comparatively speaking, running a marathon, a fast marathon, compared to a 6-day race in the desert, they're two totally different things, because obviously in the desert you're carrying everything. But I will tell you what, it was so much harder training for a fast marathon. So much harder, because you can give me my sneakers and I can run for days, but give me my sneakers and make me run fast for 26-mile repeats. It was definitely difficult. So I'm looking forward to it. They do have, probably, as you know, the virtual Boston Marathon. And then the way everything's set up is Marathon des Sables is going to hit after the Boston Marathon. So we'll do the Boston Marathon and then we'll travel out to the Sahara Desert and complete that race.
I like that you said that because speed is hard. It is.
Very hard. And especially, but I think it's key though. I will say that doing those speed workouts definitely helped my ultra running.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if you're running 100 miles, if you're running 200 miles. I feel that all of us, I don't want to say that, take it back. I feel that from what I've learned, it is such a huge and invaluable, it's a valuable lesson. So what I've learned, I'm going to utilize it, and I have utilized it and essentially implemented it back into my training regime. So I am always doing speed workouts, sprints, and mile repeats because I feel that it's only going to allow me to maintain my ultra running. It allows me to stay stronger longer, be more physically fit, maintain my endurance, and at 80 miles when everything falls apart, I'll still be held together.
Speed is fun.
And it's fun. And you know what? It's very humbling. Oh my gosh, it's so humbling.
Oh yeah.
When my kids get out there or Chris gets out there, they completely kick my butt. So it's very humbling. And I don't know, did Chris tell you how we met?
No.
So we actually met in the death race. We were, I want to say like 52 hours into the death race, we had instructions that the last 5 athletes out of the river were out of the race. So everybody, you got 70 plus pounds on your back, you're in a river, you're falling, tripping on rocks. I remember breaking my trekking poles, frantically racing down the river to get to the Borden residence, to get to the exit where we were able to get out of the water. And I get to the edge of the water and there's somebody behind me and he's like right behind me. So for me, I was embarrassed that I was gonna have to try and find my footing because of the prosthetic leg. I knew it would take me longer, but it was more so just my embarrassment. And I looked behind me and I'm like, just go. And he's like, no, you were first, go ahead and go. And I'm yelling at him back and forth, telling him to go, just sheer of my own sheer embarrassment. He's like, just go. So I climbed out of the river, and all of a sudden Peter looks down and he's like, you're out. And then we were instructed that we had 5 minutes to get back to the farm. So everybody picks up their backpacks. I want to say it's like a 2-mile run or something like that back to the farm. Everybody's frantic. You're running as fast as you can. And this guy keeps passing me, and then I pass him, and he passes me, and I pass him. And then it ended up later on, months later, at an obstacle course world championship, one of the first OCRs that they had. It was one of the times they introduced the platinum rig, and it was a very difficult one that was kind of log jamming everybody, and doing like everybody was basically log jammed at this area. And I remember, I want to say it was like my 7th or 8th attempt. I remember seeing somebody across the way, and he basically, I don't even know, just kind of guided me through it. And I actually ended up going on. I think I won first place for my age group. But a few years later, I had been reintroduced to him, and that was Chris. And our first date was actually climbing Mount Whitney.
Oh.
Yeah, so he asked me to go climbing, and it's funny because, I mean, I'll hike and climb and stuff like that, but not to any expert level. And this is Loda. And so we're out there climbing, and he took off like a rocket. And it was everything that I could do to keep up with him without breaking a leg. And after, I don't know how many hours into the race, we really started climbing the mountain, and it started to get really cold because it was in April, I think it was. So it was during the cold season. And he had actually started to go hypothermic. So I had to give him all my cold gear, put him in a sleeping bag, jump in my sleeping bag, lay on top of him for 12 hours to get him his body core temperature back to where it needed to be. And then we, climbed the rest of the mountain. And then he ended up actually burning his eyes. So the sun reflected off of the snow the entire time we were climbing, and he actually burned his eyes. So it made for quite a unique first date.
How romantic.
I know. This is Lola.
Hi, Lola.
Hi. Oh, you're so cute. Yeah.
Well, to close the interview, I just want to give people places to find you online. So Instagram handle, website, your Facebook page, anything.
So Instagram, Amy, AMYBKW1, and Facebook, I know this sounds bad. I don't know.
I saw your treadmill video on the, what are you the director of again?
Oh, so I'm the director of Step Ahead Prosthetics.
Yeah, it's on there.
Yep, we have a location in Hicksville, New York, and then we have a location in Boston. And nothing gives me greater joy than to help people walk again for the first time, or grab a cup of water, or walk outside of the house if they have something that affected and caused them to lose their ear. So situations like that, it's not every day that you get to make such a difference in the world. So I'm very fortunate with everything essentially that I get to do. I'm able to, and I choose to make a difference, and I'll continue to make the biggest difference possible. But I really do appreciate you having me. It's been a great time. And
yeah, you're a wonderful person. Thank you.
If anybody has any questions, they can feel free to reach out to me, email me, ask me whatever. I'm here to help. I look at it this way: we all have to be open with our experiences and what we're going through. And I can't always be heroic. So I thank you very much for, giving me the time and hearing my story.
Yeah, and thank you for being honest. That was lovely.
No problem.
Well, you have a good night.
You too. We'll see you later.